What's up everyone, it's Bones here. In today's video, I'll be featuring Solfachord, but before I begin, if you could happen to click on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons, it would be greatly appreciated as it goes a long way in supporting the channel and shows me that you like content like this. Clicking on those notification bells would also mean a lot as they notify you when I upload on the channel. So the first card that I want to read over isn't a new card, but it just does so much that it's worth reading, and you can activate one of these effects. Place one Solfachord Pendulum monster from your deck in your pendulum zone. The second effect reads that you can add one Solfachord Pendulum monster from your hand to the extra deck face up, then place two Solfachord Pendulum monsters, one odd and one even pendulum scale from your deck in your pendulum zone. Keep in mind that that odd and even scale thing is kind of a recurring thing through the archetype, and the third effect reads that you can add two cards, one odd and one even pendulum scale from your pendulum zones to the extra deck face up, and if you do, draw two cards. You can only activate one Solfachord Elegance per turn. So, as you saw, a card that definitely has a lot of versatility, and they're pretty strong effects because they can all come up pretty consistently, but we're going to start this one by being able to use its effect to scale to, and we'll have to put our level 5 into the extra deck for that. The level 5 is another important monster in this deck because you're able to get a Solfachord spell trap directly from your deck to your hand, and the Musica actually happens to be a pop on your opponent's turn as long as you control an even and odd scale, which we do happen to have. Now for this second combo, and I want to talk about the two other most important main deck monsters along with the level 5, the level 2 as well, because it's an extender, but for now, in my opinion, those are the ones that you want to see the most, and this one is basically a Rhoda for the deck, while this one allows you to put a Solfachord in your extra deck from your main deck. So we're going to start this one by normal summoning the level 1, and from here we'll be able to get ourselves a search as we're going to get ourselves the level 2, and the level 2 has an effect which activates from the hand that can allow you to special summon it as long as you control a Solfachord scale, and we're going to special summon it out here as we're then going to be able to go into our Beyond the Pendulum, get ourselves a search. From here we'll get ourselves the scale 1, which happens to also be a level 8, and this is something I would also like to point out where it would be nice if we did have a scale 0, because as you see, the strongest card arguably in this deck is a level 1, and not having a scale 0 for the archetype kind of hurts, and making you rely on certain generic cards just sometimes isn't good enough to cut it in a fast evolving game. So we're now going to be able to scale the 1 as we're then going to pendulum summon for 2 here, and then we'll be able to get our first new card, the Grand Solfachord Coolio, and this one takes 2+ monsters including a pendulum monster, gains 100 attack for each face-up pendulum monster in your extra deck. The activated effects of pendulum monsters this card points to cannot be negated. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can special summon one Solfachord card with an odd pendulum scale from your pendulum zone to your zone this card points to, and if you do, negate the activation. Then you can add one Solfachord pendulum monster with an even pendulum scale from your deck to your face-up extra deck. So an Omni Negate that also gives you a potential search and special summon, which is a powerful card on its own, but it doesn't necessarily further your plays into bigger boards. It's just more of an end board card. Now for this next combo, and I want to feature 3 of the more important main deck monsters here, the level 1, the level 2, and the level 4, and we're going to start by normal summoning the 1, as we're then going to get ourselves the scale 1. We're going to scale it so that we can special summon out the level 2 using its effect, and then from here we'll go into our Beyond the Pendulum. We'll then be able to get ourselves a search off of it as we're going to get the scale 6, and this one is basically just spell and trap removal, as if it's normal or special summoned, you can target a spell trap that your opponent controls and bounce it to the hand. But I would also like to point out that as you see, pendulum summons of your Solfachord pendulum monsters cannot be negated when it's on the scale, and you'll notice that the effect that it has is a recurring theme throughout the rest of the archetype, except that the bigger ones do happen to have pendulum effects that make it so that your opponent cannot activate a spell trap or monster effect when your Solfachord pendulum monsters are special summoned. So I would also like to point out that that's probably like the most unfair thing that the deck is capable of doing, being able to make sure that your plays can go unresponded. But outside of that, you're probably noticing that a lot of the rest of it is very fair. So we're just going going to use the effect of our level 4 to put the level 5 in the extra deck for follow-up, and then we're just going to go into the Appaloosa, which there's probably different things that you can do depending on your hand. For example, if you want to go into Masquerena for an Avramax or something like that, you can do that, but you'll also see other options within the video. So now I want to come back to a similar hand, except instead of going into the Beyond the Pendulum, we're finally going to go into the Solfachord Link 2. So we're going to search ourselves our scale 1, and then from here we'll be able to use the level 2 to special summon itself out. We'll then go into the Link 2, and this one has a weird effect. It takes 2 pendulum monsters to bring out, and during your main phase you can add 1 pendulum monster from your hand to the extra deck face up, and 1 face up pendulum monster from your extra deck to the hand, as long as one of them has an even pendulum scale and the other has an odd pendulum scale. When you pendulum summon a Solfachord monsters, you can target one of them, add 1 Solfachord pendulum monster from your deck to your hand whose levels equal the pendulum scales of that monster. You can only use each effect of Musica once per turn. So it's a interesting card because there's definitely plays that could come out of this with the proper support, but as of now it just feels very minimal in what you can do with it. But we're going to use its effect to put the level 5 into our extra deck and get the level 2. This allows us to put the level 2 as a scale for us to be able to pendulum summon, and this will get us the level 5, which will also allow us to trigger the Link monster, which will get us a search for the level 4 since it's a scale 5, I believe, or a scale 4 actually, and we'll get ourselves the trap to give us a pop on our opponent's turn along with the follow-up, and we also get the Omni negation through the new Link. Now for this next combo, and we'll finally be using the OP spell along with the level 1 together, and this is where the combos are going to step up a little bit, though don't take that too seriously. And we're going to start this one by putting the scales onto our field by putting the level 4 into the extra deck. We'll then normal summon the level 1, and we'll get ourselves a search for the level 2, which we can then activate from our hand to special summon, and then from here we can go into our Beyond the Pendulum, use its effect to get us a search, and we'll get the level 5, which we can then pendulum summon as we want to be able to get that search. So we'll be able to get the quick play that we'll be getting in Cyberstorm Access, and it reads, apply these effects in sequence based on the number of face-up Solfachord pendulum monsters with different names in your extra deck. 3+ Solfachord pendulum monsters you control gain attack equal to their own pendulum scale times 300 this turn. 5+ you can destroy 1 card your opponent controls, then if you have an odd pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, draw 1 card. 7+ you can special summon 1 Grand Solfachord monster from your extra deck. You can only activate 1 Solfachord Symphony per turn. So it's a cute card, but in reality, in this build at least, you'll only be using it for the 5+ effect. And the interesting thing about this too is that it kind of does just double down with the trap, where it gives you 2 pops. So it's another card that's not further progressing your game state. It's just another end board card, which doesn't necessarily help the consistency of the deck too much. And from here we're then going to get ourselves descend off the main deck to the extra deck off the scale 5, the fire one, and then from here we're then going to go into our Omni, as we're then going to link away into our IP. We can then set the quick play and end our board on that. Now in this video I'll actually be doing 3 different test hands, because the thing is that I don't want to make the video too repetitive. There's not a lot of combo ability in this deck, so I'm just gonna get to the meat of the video and get onto the deck profile, and from here we'll be able to start by using the spell card in order to get our scales into the field while putting the level 5 into the extra deck, and from here we'll normal summon the level 4, as we'll be able to send the level 7 to our extra deck. As you see, we're just doing it for extra names, but we're going to special summon out the level 2 by activating its effect, bringing out the Beyond the Pendulum, and then from here we'll be able to get our level 4, and this is just a body, and this is another point where if we had a scale 0, we could actually get the level 1 so that we could get its on summon effect, but unfortunately we don't have that scale 0, so we're going to be able to bring out our monsters here, as we'll get the search for the spell and trap off the level 5, getting our trap card. We'll then go into the Omni negate, go into a Lambda since we do have the Gamma. This will give us a monster negate, an Omni negate, and a pop. So again, it's not a lot, but it isn't a little bit either. There's definitely pieces to build towards the future with some of the cards that we have here. Now, this next one is kind of like the quote-unquote awkward hand, and you can see that we're actually on Small World, and I thought it was a nice addition to this deck because you're just able to get into the cards you want to see via your hand traps and stuff like that. The Solfachords themselves can also search each other out since they're all fairies and different attributes and stuff, but we're then going to use our scale 6 in order to bring out our level 2, and then we're going to normal summon the level 4 in order to get the send to the extra deck, as we're going to send the 5, bring out the Beyond the Pendulum. This will get us the scale 1, I believe. Yeah, we will get the scale 1, as we're then going to pendulum summon for 2 cards here, as we can't special summon or pendulum summon the Droll, and we'll get the effect of the level 5, which will get us into the trap, and you'll notice that we do get the trap more than the quick play, which also makes it an interesting card to get as support considering the timing, but we'll end up with an Appaloosa, the pop, and a Droll, which the Droll can be a turn ender in the upcoming format, especially depending on the ban list, so I guess that's nice. And now for the final hand, and I'll be doing the hand where we draw all the gas along with even a Solfachord quick play, the new one in this scenario, but we'll be able to use the effect of the spell card in order to get 2 pendulum scales while also putting 1 in the extra deck, as we'll normal summon the level 1, use its effect in order to get a search for the 5. We can then bring out the 2, activating its effect in hand, going into the Link to Solfachord. This will allow us to put the 5 in the extra deck, put the 4 in our hand, and you don't have to do that. We'll be able to pendulum summon now, as we're going to bring out the 5, the 4, and the 2, and then we'll also be able to trigger the Link monster, which will net us a search, as we're going to get the trap card along with the level 4, and then we're going to go into the Omni. We're going to use the effect of the level 4, which I want to point out, in my previous combo you may have noticed that I used the level 4 before the Link 3, and that's something that you can definitely play around with if you want to use the Link 3 to protect the level 4, but at the same time, depending on your hand, sometimes baiting stuff, especially in a format with Ogre, can seem more logical, but we're going to be able to go into our IP Masquerena here, set 2, and this will give us an Omni Negate that can also bring out a body, and this would make it so that we can go into our Nightmare Unicorn so that we also have a discard, and having 2 additional pops, because we actually do happen to have 5 different names in the extra deck doing this and in this specific way. That is kind of nice, but that'll wrap up all the combos, and I'll take you onto the deck profile. So finally, with all of the combos out of the way, you can finally see the deck profile, and you'll see that there are some nice consistency pieces, like we do have the 3/1s, Small Worlds, the Prosperity, that's 9 slots dedicated to your consistency. I guess you can say the Elegances too, since it does bring out scales, but it doesn't necessarily get your plays started, because if you happen to get out your scales but don't have anything that you may want to pendulum summon, especially if the level 1 gets hand trapped or something like that, which is a big problem that the deck has, then it can make it a not great card. It's one of those situations where we definitely do need new cards to make cards like this shine, but we'll also see some of the options, and I would like to point out that we did go into our Link 2s a lot, and that can make the gigantic sprite with the Sprint interesting to test around with. I would also like to mention Abyss Curtain Raiser and Chronograph, because one thing that the Beyond the Pendulum and the Solfachord Link 2 have in common is that you just need pendulum monsters to really bring them out. The Beyond the Pendulum only needs 1 pendulum monster, but the fact that you can just bring them out with pendulum monsters, there is a world I can see where you may want to use generic spammers in order to bring this out, but given the current support we have right now, I just don't feel like there's anything to do with that. It just takes away from what you can do with the rest of your deck. But the other thing I would like to point out are board breakers, and that is another important thing that you'll need this format, especially with Super Heavy and the Nor. So the Santa Claus is also important. And then you'll also see the Regulus, the level 5 Pendulum Fusion, and the River Stormer. This is something that you can also play around with Proxy Magician. The problem with this is that we don't have enough gas cards in order to bring out enough bodies to make the investment worth it. Because if we could just go into this, then somehow trigger Cross Sheep before going into the, I think, 3 or anything like that, there may be some merit behind playing it. We also do have the ability to make something like River Stormer to go into the Goliath and also be able to search our Regulus before doing so, giving us an Omni Negation, but at this point in time, it's just a massive waste of investment in resources that isn't really worth going for. That's why I have them all as maybe future options here. I wouldn't even consider them now. I think that if you're going to play this deck, you should probably just focus on the board breakers and forget all of this until we actually have better support to make it work. I would like to point out, though, that the sprite things could be interesting given that we do have a level 2, but do also have to consider the main deck investment. Aside of that, I tried maxing out on the Solfachords that we want to see the most because there's not enough good ones in my opinion. The one-ofs are the high levels along with the scale 6, which is just spell and trap removal that doesn't even fully get rid of it. It returns it to the hand. So while not bad, it's not the greatest either. It's not the high impact that you would like to see this deck have. But outside of that, I think I'm just gonna get onto the card by card because everything else seems pretty self-explanatory. So we have the 3 Small World, the 3 Elegance, the 1 Symphonia, the 1 Harmonia, the 1 Musica, the 3 Prosperity, the 3 level 4s, the 3 level 2s, the 3 level 5s, the 3 level 1s, the Driver, the level 8, the level 7, the level 3, the 3 Santa Claus, the 1 Droll, or the 3 Droll, the 3 Ghost Ogre, the 3 Gamma, and the 1 Driver to round out the main deck. Onto the extra deck, we have the Sky Cavalry for the Zeus, Dweller along with the Durandal, the Agent Link 2, and this is to play around Rivalry. We do have a deck pretty much full of fairies as far as our Pendulum monsters go, so it is easy to make. Then we have the IP Masquerena, the Lambda, the 2 Beyond the Pendulum, Grand Solfachord Link 2, the 2 Grand Solfachord Link 3, the Nightmare Unicorn, Access Code, and Appaloosa to round out the deck profile. But anyways, if you made it this far into the video, I thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. It's Bones, signing out.